Hello from the German Rhone. Today's vlog is a little interlude to the seashell vlogs, for which I still have a few in queue, so don't worry, the next weeks you'll see the coast again. But yeah, today I wanted to come to the forest and try to get some spring photos, because here in Germany it's springtime now, and yeah, if you look at the forest floor, you see all those beautiful flowers here, and yeah, I thought those could make for a nice photo. I only need to find some composition which I can use to include those. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm walking around here in the forest, trying to find something which gets those flowers, some trees, maybe a path leading through the trees, something like that. And also today, it's kind of a challenge for me because I'm not taking photos with my 5DSR, which I normally use and which I feel very comfortable using. Today I only brought my Fuji X-T20, which is my secondary camera, and I always have this camera on travels in case the 5DSR stops working for some reason, and normally my girlfriend shoots it, but yeah, I also need to figure out how it works and I get used to it just in case that someday my 5DSR doesn't work. So today, yeah, I'll try to get comfortable with the Fuji and yeah, see if I can get a photo which I like with it. So that's what this day is about, trying to familiarize myself with the Fuji camera and yeah, also taking some spring photos. So let's see what I can come up with. So, I think I found exactly what I was talking about in the beginning. So I have a nice pathway leading through the trees and another of those beautiful flowers. And I've already set up the Fuji here. And yeah, I came down a little lower so that I have many of those flowers in the frame and yeah, can create some nice depth. Also, I'm shooting at I think 40 millimeters, which with the crop sensor is around 60 for full frame, and this allows me to cut out any sky in the frame. So because the sky is very bright, so I thought it's a good idea to get back a little bit and zoom in to avoid having the sky in the frame. And yeah, this now gives me nice framing, and as soon as the sun comes out, the light is very beautiful, although I think it's 2 o'clock or so, so naturally the light is quite harsh, but here in the forest and with the clouds, it creates some nice patterns on the forest floor. And yeah, let's have a look at the photos I've taken, or I tried to take. So I'm not very good with the Fuji yet, I don't know which buttons to press, but I figured out there's a setting here on this wheel which is bracketing. So since I'm not very used to this camera, I thought it's a good idea to do bracketing and see that I get all the dynamic range, because I don't know yet what a single exposure will look like. So if it's good enough to contain all the dynamic range of the scene. So when I'm now testing this camera, I always do bracketing and later figure out what this camera can do in terms of dynamic range. And yeah, then since I've zoomed in a little bit, I have to do focus stacking. And yeah, this is quite nice here. I have this tilt screen, and yeah, that's something what the 5DSR doesn't do. I can just touch where I want the focus to be and then take the photo. So focus stacking with this camera, or the process of taking the photos, is much faster than with the 5DSR. But otherwise, I just have to practice a bit. And yeah, now I'm waiting for the sun to come out, and then I'll get the next sequence of photos. So I have to be ready. Let's get the focus to the background first. I have a 2-second timer to avoid any blur from moving camera. And that was the first sequence. Let's get a little closer. Do the second one. And I think I need a third one. I'm shooting at f11 and on a crop sensor. I think for this scene 3 different focus spots should be enough. But again, I'll do a 4th and a 5th one just to make sure I get everything, because I'm not used to this camera, as I said a few times already. So get a 4th focus point and maybe someone very far to the background. Yeah, and now we'll have to wait and see how this looks on the big screen. So I've now finished photographing the scene here, and yeah, most of the time I was quite low with the camera, trying to get as much of those flowers in the foreground as possible. And yeah, shooting directly in the direction of the light. This created some nice shadows, and I think it will also give some nice depth in the final photo, but we'll have to see. But first of all, I want to give you a quick first impression I have with working with the Fuji, so how it was operating it compared to the Canon. And yeah, one thing I liked is the tilt screen, which makes it easy to see what you're photographing if you have the camera quite low, as I had today. And also the touch screen, which allows me to focus and even to take a photo by just touching somewhere on the screen, was very nice and made focus stacking very easy. But one thing I really hate, or maybe I just haven't figured out how to do it yet, is I can't just zoom in to the very bottom part of the frame. So the focus points go all around the frame, but not the closest to the bottom. And also I didn't figure out how I could zoom in there. So for Canon, my workflow is very easy. I just use the joystick, go to the bottom, zoom in and get it sharp manually. But with the Fuji, I have this focus peaking feature, which is nice and very convenient, but I don't get to the very close bottom, and I have to do some Googling to figure this out, because it's kind of a bummer, and I really hope that the close foreground got sharp there. But besides, it was very good working with the camera, and yeah, now we have to look at the photos, and yeah, hopefully I didn't screw it, because as you know, photos often look so nice on the little screen, but once you open them up on the big screen, you see all those flaws, and I hope this doesn't happen today. So let's go to the office. So I had a look at the photos and also played around with the files a bit. Also, I finished processing one photo, which I'll show you in a minute. But I also want to talk about the quality of the files and what amount of detail I was able to pull from them, because I'm kind of a pixel peeper and I like to look at the photos very closely. And with the Fuji files I was a little bit underwhelmed at first, so I didn't know what to make out of them, because there's a lot of foliage and grasses in the photo, and I wasn't able to pull out the detail which I had wanted. So I kind of first tried my normal processing, which didn't work at all, and then I did some Googling and found out that you have to process those Fuji files differently. And in the end I think I managed to come away with quite a good photo which I could print, but I'm not 100% satisfied with it. And it's best I show you the files and we can talk about it a bit. Also, I'm very interested in your feedback. Maybe some of you guys are shooting Fuji and have some tips for me. But for now, let's just look at the photos. So this here is one of the frames I took, and this was focused to the middle area here around this tree where we have all those flowers. And yeah, looking at it, you see the histogram looks quite nice. So I didn't need bracketing for this scene at all. I can use just this one exposure to get all the dynamic range, which is quite nice. And yeah, also I looked a bit at the dark tones in the image already, and I find they're very clean, not much noise there. And yeah, from a dynamic range standpoint, I think this camera is quite good, at least compared to Canon. So you know, Canon has their problems there. But now let's focus on the details, and this is usually what's really important for me. So let's zoom in here on this area, and out of camera, this raw file is not too detailed here. So I would first try my normal workflow here. So sharpening as I would my Canon files, and I pull up the masking, pull down the radius a bit, and yeah, normally I do this sharpening with Nik, a pre-sharpener, but let's just do this here in Lightroom so I can show you the comparison. So to increase the details, I'd normally increase the amount. And what happens are those warmy artifacts here in the foliage. This is what you find if you Google that Fuji files can produce such warmy artifacts if you do sharpening the wrong way. And this is what I first did. So I tried this sharpening and I was a bit horrified how this affected the files. And after some Googling, I found that this is wrong and that there's a better way to process those Fuji files. So let's reset the settings here and try again. For Fuji files, rather than increasing the amount of sharpening, you would work with the detail and pull it up to something between 60 and 70. I read that this is a good amount, and also my tests showed me that I could use it. The radius goes to something around 1.2 or 1.3, which is completely different to what I do with my Canon files. Then I give it a masking of around 10, and I can pull up the amount a bit. But I wouldn't do it too far because then I get those warmy artifacts again. So I leave it a little lower. And let's see the before and after. So I think this is as good as it gets if you're using Lightroom. And it's a decent starting point for further post-processing, but still, it's not what I'm used to. And you can argue this is really pixel peeping what I'm doing here, but yeah, I was really hoping to get better detail from the Fuji. Also, I downloaded the Irident transformer, which is a RAW converter specifically designed to work with the Fuji files. And I just got the demo version for testing. And yeah, even with this RAW converter, I think the detail reproduction could be improved. So it's not what I'm used to really. But aside from that, let's just see if I would take this photo now through my normal workflow from here, what I could come up with. And I already did this, and let me just show you the final file. And again, we do some pixel peeping here. And this was focus stacked and processed with my usual workflow. So working on color, contrast and details. And I think in the end it's quite decent photo, and especially in the middle part and foreground, the details look quite nice. But here in the background, where the flowers are very close to each other, where I have lots of foliage, yeah, it could be better, as I said. But maybe I'm just too critical here. And also, if you use a Fuji camera, you can tell me if I did something wrong or if this is completely normal and I'm just too critical. So any feedback is welcome here. But aside from that, I'm quite happy with the photo, and also I think I could print it at least 30-inch, I think this would be okay. And maybe I'll do some test prints here. But yeah, otherwise, if there would just be a little more detail here in this foliage, I'd really love to use this camera more. But for now, it will just stay as a replacement camera in case my Canon fails me at some time on my travels.